Hi. We like Dungeons and Dragons here. We enjoy it. We play it. We love the creativity that it allows, the escapism, the ability to flex the muscles of improv and storytelling. Some people love it a little too much, and some people don't understand boundaries. And today we're going to be experiencing together a story of an incel being not only transphobic, but toxic, as if they weren't already one and the same thing. And don't worry, this is a completely original idea. I did not steal this idea from any other creators on YouTube. This is the first instance of anyone ever reacting to the RPG horror story subreddit, so all credit goes to me.
Why you always lying?
Transphobic Incel doesn't realize he's toxic incel. Again, they're one and the same. After watching Den of the Drake, Crit Crab, and making sure no one but the problem player minded, I decided to make an account and post my own RPG horror story that took place not too long ago. This is a new account, so I'm not sure if my post will be filtered or not, but here we go. Me, a human monk. My fiance, an elven sorcerer. Friend 1, an elven bard. Friend 2, a dwarven paladin. Problem player, a human barbarian. And we have the GM. Around the end of January this year, one of my fiance's childhood friends contacted her asking if she was interested in playing some D&D. We both ended up joining in with a couple people the GM knew from college. Outside of a couple one-shots with my fiance and cousins, I hadn't played D&D for years, so I was super excited to be in another game. After a short session 0, we started session 1 in an old village which had recently been under attack. All our characters were drawn together as the attack affected each of us in some way. No noticeable red flags at first. Not long into the first session, however, the problem player's character began flirting with my fiance's character. Oh dear. My character was married and was going on a quest to find an old family heirloom, and her character was flirty with various other characters, so none of us paid it any mind in the beginning. However, the first sign came at the end of the session where he accidentally grabbed her hand. She glared at him, leading him to spurt out, "Oh, sorry, I missed my dice." He followed that up by giving us both a cheesy wink. You know these people are engaged, and you're still gonna... Okay, we're gonna withhold too much judgment for now. A little scummy, a little gross, but so far not a huge infraction. Weird considering how he had already put his dice away, but we stupidly decided to ignore it for now. The next couple of sessions weren't terrible. Barbarian continued flirting with my fiance's character. She ended up rejecting the barbarian's advances, which resulted in him throwing a temper tantrum and insisting it's just how my character would act. Weird and convenient. Anyway, the GM asked if we could play on the coming Sunday afternoon instead of Saturday, as he wouldn't be able to make it. The bard said that time wouldn't work for him because he had church obligations. He asks if they could do Sunday evening instead. Barbarian rolled his eyes and said, "Oh geez, make us miss D&D for church." He smirked at Paladin, who gave an uncaring shrug. Pause. I'm not a fan of the church either. But when you're playing a game with other people, they're going to have different beliefs than you. They're going to have different worldviews. And unless it's something extremely problematic, you have to at least, even if you disagree, respect their right to believe what they believe. They're allowed to believe whatever they want, and you have to respect that, as long as it's not something that is directly harmful to you or others. And for the most part, people in church aren't always super harmful and toxic. I'm sure this person is a great person. I'm making a lot of assumptions based on no information, but the need for that kind of comment is none. There's no reason to make any kind of comment like that based on someone's religious views. So that's just, I would have just kicked them out already for that comment alone. GM. It doesn't matter. I can do Sunday evening if you all can. Will that work? We'll have to cut the session short though. Barbarian. Figures. Paladin. We changed our last session for you. Barbarian, but my reasons are important. Monk, bard, what do you think? Both my fiance and I are also Christian, but we don't go to church nearly as often as bard does. From what we understand, Barbarian thought we were atheists like GM and Paladin. None of us minded. Yeah, we were disappointed we would have a shorter session, but things come up. Most of us apparently understood that. Not, however, our problem player. Barbarian mumbled something about Bard shoving his religion down our throats and stormed off. Well, he was struggling with a couple classes, so we all decided to cut him some slack. GM said he'd talk to Barbarian tomorrow. Again, asking to push a session back for religious reasons is not shoving religion down the party's throat. It is asking to make a concession based on a thing that is personally important to the player, and everyone should take that into consideration because at the end of the day, you're a group trying to get together and have fun. And it's okay to miss a session or have a shorter session for someone to be able to pursue those interests. That's okay. While GM didn't tell us at the time, he texted Barbarian asking him what was up. To make a long story short, they got into a rather heated argument. Barbarian said once Bard learned GM was trans, which he already knew, he'd abandon him just like the GM's family did? Oh, I guess you're not showing up to the next game then, Barbarian. How is the story not over now? That is disgusting. Sorry, Mike. That is so gross, dude. Wait, I need to read that again. Barbarian said once Bard learned GM was trans, which so he's saying that because the Bard is a religious person and religious people immediately hate trans people, but the Bard already knew the GM was trans, the Bard would abandon the GM like the GM's family abandoned them. Ooh. I would have come through that phone. Oh. Anyway, for obvious reasons, GM was really hurt by this. He didn't share this story with us at the time, and I'm not sure why he invited Barbarian back after the exchange. That's what I'm saying. Looking back, I wish I would have said something. Yeah, I didn't know, but I still feel like shit thinking about it. We're going to pause again, because you can't blame yourself for things that you didn't know were going on. I'm sure if OP had known that the Barbarian, he said, if OP and other people in the group had known that Barbarian had made these comments, they all would have gotten together and said, hey, kick rocks, nerd. Get out of here. You're not welcome here. Because transphobia is never welcome at the gaming table. Transphobia, any kind of homophobia, xenophobia, anything like that, racism, sexism, it shouldn't be allowed in TTRPGs. It shouldn't be allowed in gaming at all. And it should be something that is met with extreme prejudice. The next session came and Barbarian was pissed and smelling of alcohol. Okay. GM was jittery and not up to his normal game. We asked if he wanted to cancel that day, but he shook his head and we continued the session like normal. My fiance, who both in and out of character had grown tired of Barbarian's flirting, shut him down when he asked her character for sex. Out of character, he said, come on, your character's single, just like... Come on. Your character's single, just like you should be in real life. Me. What? He glared across the table at me. Look, dude, Sorcerer's pretty and taller than you. She deserves someone like me, not a short, stupid incel. For the record, she is quite a bit taller than me. I'm 5'7", she's 6'1", and Barbarian is a couple inches taller than her. Me, fuck off. Appropriate response. My fiance starts to beak, and Barbarian shushes her and puts an arm around her shoulders. She shoves him away, leaving him with a shocked Pikachu expression. My face is getting tight. I'm angry. My face. Okay. Barbarian. What the hell? Our characters love each other. Don't be such a bitch and take an incel over me. I'm a nice guy. I don't remember if he specifically said nice guy, but it's essentially what he was going for. My fiance. Leave. Again. All very appropriate responses. Barbarian, you can't kick me out. Note, we were playing in a large community area. This is GM's game, not yours. GM, Barbarian, if you don't want to leave, can you at least please apologize? Barbarian, for what? I did nothing wrong. He's the one, points at me, who's being a total incel and gaslight Sorcerer into dating him. We tell him to get out. He growls, shouts at the GM saying we'll all abandon him eventually, scribbles his number on a piece of paper, shoves it to my fiance, and storms away. Along with his number, he wrote, "Call me if you want a real man." As a man who is married and has had people behave like this towards my wife, I can tell you from personal experience, my response would be to smack you in the face, because that's what has happened in the past. Not in these exact terms, but similar situation, similar encounter. And when they decided not to back off, the end result was a stern smack in the face. And this would have had the same result if it were me at that table. I'm just saying that's my own, based on my own experiences. Obviously, they didn't want it to escalate to that. I think Barbarian did. I think he's living up to the Barbarian trope really well of being a big, dumb fucking idiot. But continuing on. Suffice to say, we were all shook up and had no desire to play any more D&D. I drove my fiance and GM home that night. When next week rolled around, Paladin texted us asking if we were still interested in playing. My fiance and I said sure, but not with Barbarian. Everyone else agreed. I wish I could say it ended there. It didn't. My God. Saturday afternoon comes by and it's all of us without Barbarian. GM was too nervous to tell Barbarian, so Paladin, thank God for her, took it upon herself to inform Barbarian that he wasn't invited back. Brave, bold move. Let's see how it plays out. The session went fine for a couple hours. Then the door opened. We thought nothing of it at first, as it wasn't uncommon for other people to come in. But that's when we heard the telltale shriek, "You bastards started without me!" Barbarian stormed over. We all braced for the worst. Instead of assaulting us, he stood there and spewed out verbal abuse, calling Bard a religious nutjob who constantly shoves Christianity down our throats, me an incel, and my fiance and Paladin bitches who don't know a good guy when they see one. When done with us, he rounded toward GM, who's sobbing at this point, and calls him an idiot who abandoned the only person who cared about him. Still somehow thinking he had the moral high ground, Barbarian dead-named GM and said it's no wonder why his family didn't want anything to do with him. We threatened to call the police if he didn't leave. Barbarian glared at us, ripped up a few of our character sheets, and stormed off. My fiance, Paladin, and Bard were quick to block him on social media. I, however, was a little slow and received this lovely message from him. I can't believe how you treated me. No, how you treated me and Sorcerer. It's obvious she isn't into you. You forced her to date you, and I doubt she really is your fiancé. Be lucky I, the gentleman that I am, did not beat the shit out of you the moment I saw you. I'm done with all your Napoleon crap. She is too. We've all had enough of it. I'm coming back next session. By then, I expect you to have broken up with Sorcerer and apologized to both of us for being a short little incel. Oh, and tell her and the other two cowards to unblock me. Idiots. I will be there next week awaiting my apology. We'll get to that in a minute. GM also received a nasty message, but he didn't want to share it with any of us. Frankly, I don't blame him. We ended up not playing that week. My fiance and I were worried GM was suicidal, so we spent the next weekend with him. Once he was comfortable enough, we did start playing again, though this time in his apartment. None of us heard from Barbarian again. An acquaintance told me Barbarian was arrested after beating up a girl who rejected him. I don't know if it's true or not, but unfortunately does sound like something he'd do. Either way, we're all better off without Barbarian in our lives. Woo! Wow. Okay. As a fellow short king, there's nothing wrong with I'm 5'9". Culturally, I'm still considered a short king because I'm not 6'3". There's nothing wrong with being of shorter stature. It doesn't make you any less of a man. It doesn't make you any less of a person. The fact that this barbarian, this problem player, this incel, thought that just because they were tall, suddenly that entitled them to OP's fiance is obviously disgusting, inappropriate, and absolutely unacceptable behavior. And the problem is, what we see in a lot of instances is that it's this alpha male idea that fuels this kind of ideology, that fuels this kind of thought process, that just the simple fact of being tall or having a certain amount of athleticism suddenly like makes you better than other people and gives you this weird fucked mindset that you're like suddenly entitled to people's bodies because of that. And that's what's led to this gross incel culture, and it's bleeding into D&D. Clearly. I mean, this story is awful. And I can only hope that OP and his friends, and GM especially, are doing much better without this piece of utter trash in their lives. Now, how I would have handled this is the first instance of this kind of toxic behavior, I would have had them removed from the game. I know it's not my game, but I still would have brought that forward to the rest of the group. This person is making myself and my fiance uncomfortable. He clearly has something going on here that is toxic and is unacceptable, and I don't feel comfortable playing with this person. It's not OP's fault that they didn't bring this up. They, more than likely didn't want to mess up the group dynamic and mess up the party balance. 2, didn't know some of this was going on, clearly, because they weren't aware of the messages the GM was getting. 3, probably didn't know how to handle that kind of confrontation. I mean, it seemed to me that he just sort of stood, and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, just sort of stood by and kind of let this happen, let the problem player speak to him this way, which is fine. It's better to try and defuse a situation than to get aggressive in just about every instance. But at the same time, you need to be able to stand up for yourself and say, hey, enough is enough. You're not going to speak to me this way. You're not going to speak to my fiance this way. You're not going to speak to the people at the table this way. You need to leave. And if they decide to get violent, then you call the authorities and you handle your business, I guess, depending upon how they want to handle that situation. You have a right to defend yourself if someone gets aggressive with you and gets physical with you. You have a right to defend yourself if someone makes you uncomfortable. You have a right to say no. Everyone has the right to say no. Wow. Oh boy. I've never had to deal with this at a game of D&D. I've dealt with this in other scenarios, in friend groups. I've dealt with this, in workplaces, but I've never had this experience in D&D, and I'm thankful. Again, I hope OP and his group are doing much better. I hope GM is safe and is feeling loved by the rest of the group. If you are having any doubts or any feelings like this where they mentioned that they were worried that GM was suicidal after all this, if you're feeling any kind of way like that, reach out and get help. Talk to somebody. It's okay. No one's gonna mind. There are people out there that want to help you. There are people out there that love and support you. I love and support you. If you are a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, I am an ally to you. You are family to me. I love you and I respect you, and I will always defend you. I will always care for you. So you are welcome in this community, just like you should be welcome in any community. We're going to end on a positive note. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more content like this, let me know in the comments below. I like reading this kind of stuff because it makes me feel better about my personal experiences playing D&D, and it's also just a good source of cringe to keep us grounded. As always, have a lovely day.